All right, Jack, we are live, sir.
Cool, man. Happy to be here.
Dude, I'm super happy to be here. Now, did I say your name correctly in the video? Is it Ruch?
That's perfectly correct. Yes.
Love
Which
it.
nobody ever gets that right.
So I know I before I made that video, I made a point to watch a bunch of other videos and try to find an interview where someone said your name because I didn't want to screw it up.
Oh,
So
cool. Thank
so
you.
I'm glad that that is actually accurate.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, happy Friday. We have another special Friday edition live stream with a guest. I know last week we had Jake Sininger from Humphreys McGee, and these Friday sessions have really been a lot of fun. So I thank you guys for tuning in. And I see people starting to pull into the chat here. We have Tim Whitaker, we have Fishing, KLC. So if you guys recently saw the video, I just did a video on Jack, and Jack, I wasn't blowing smoke at all. I remember when I first saw you play when you were in Maryland with Adam Wakefield, and I just, as I told you off camera, I've been on a search for the inside, like those simple, super memorable, super tasteful lines for years now. And when I saw you play, I was like, man, this guy gets it. And so I've been watching all your Instagram videos and I'm one of your Patreons, and I just wanted to thank you publicly again for inspiring me and for willing to come on here and do this, man.
Oh, well, thank you so much, man. It means a lot to me for you to say that. Yeah, man, I'm very humbled by that and very grateful.
Yeah. Well, so I don't really know much about you at all. So would you mind, because I'm sure most of the people that watched that video, I could tell by the comments and people that messaged me directly, didn't know much about you either. So would you mind giving us just a little bit of background?
Yeah, well, I actually grew up not far from where you are. I grew up outside of Frederick,
I didn't
Maryland.
know. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, actually, Jenny, who I don't know if you know Jenny,
Adam's
Adam's
wife
fiance,
or fiance?
we went to elementary school together.
Really?
The same grade, same year, everything.
Oh, on a side note, did you know that Adam and Jenny with their old band Old Man Brown played my wedding?
Oh, I didn't know that. No, I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
yeah, they were my wedding band.
Oh, wow, that's great. Yeah, so that's where I grew up, and then when I was 13, my family moved overseas, and we lived in Japan for well, my parents lived there for about 12 years. I lived there until I finished high school.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a culture shock going from sort of rural suburban Frederick to Tokyo, Japan. But it was a great thing for me. I mean, I was 13 years old, so I was just really diving into music and guitar. And to be in a huge city like that with a huge love for music was life-changing for me, for sure. And then I moved after high school. I went to music school in Los Angeles at GIT.
You went to GIT too?
Yeah, yeah. I went there in 2002 to like
Dude, you were like
2004.
3 years ahead of me. I went there in 2000. Oh, god damn it. Sorry about this. Someone's trying to FaceTime me. I thought I had that turned off. Yeah, I was there from 2005 to 2007, something like that.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I still have a lot of friends around that, community of people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I lived in LA until about 2013, and then I moved here to Nashville with my wife, and we have two kids now. And yeah, I love it here. This has been kind of the best. I feel like it's the most comfortable for me. I feel like I'm home here.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I loved GIT, but I did not love living in Hollywood. And it was
Yeah.
and so what did you do musically or to make a living out there from when you graduated GIT to till 2013? And I ask because when I first went to GIT, it was it was still very much a place where people went, and if you worked really hard, you got great industry gigs. It was definitely
Yeah.
still that place. But by the time I had graduated, iTunes, YouTube, and the whole digital thing that Napster started really hit full force. And like the top 5 or 6 guys, which I wasn't one of, they got good jobs, but the rest of us really struggled out there.
Yeah, well, that's a good point because that whole I feel like you know people from you and I's generation kind of came up through that really ugly period in the music business between
Yeah.
when I was a kid in the 90s, all the bands I liked were huge commercial successes, that were on the radio, like Nirvana or Soundgarden or any of these rock bands. They had hits on the radio. They sold millions of albums, and that was kind of what formed my vision of like, okay, that's what I'll try to do. And then that all sort of crumbled apart in the early 2000s
Yeah.
with the whole Napster thing that's kind of started with that. And then it didn't really come back until social media and Instagram and YouTube kind of made it possible for people to, reach an audience, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, it was, I worked different jobs. I worked actually for several years at Schecter Guitars, the guitar company, doing repairs and setups, and then I had my own bands, original bands that I played in on the weekends and stuff. And then I played cover gigs for many years.
But how was the cover scene in LA? See, I played deep in the cover scene back in Baltimore, and you could make a living doing it. You could make a pretty good living doing it, but that wasn't my experience in LA.
Yeah, well, it's very competitive. Even like cover bands, there's a million guys that want every situation.
Well, it was a race for the bottom too. It was everybody undercutting everybody.
Yeah, which I've heard is still going on and bad in other cities too. But yeah. I got lucky. I kind of got in with a restaurant gig playing acoustic covers and making like really ridiculous money playing for like drunks on Hollywood Boulevard or on Sunset. And it really, I did it for way too long, and it wasn't something that was musically probably the best thing for me because, too much alcohol, not really caring about playing, but making a living and kind of, you kind of get tied into that LA thing of like, this is where everything's happening and I have to be here.
Yep.
When I moved away to Nashville, my immediate thought was, wow, I should have done this a long time ago, just because you kind of like get back in reality in a place like this. So, but, I have no regrets. I met my wife out there. So
now, is she from California?
She's originally from like kind of central California.
Right on. Fishing is pretty good for Steel Panther. That worked. Jack, do you remember, were they doing it when you were at GIT? Steel Panther used to be under a different name, and they had weekly metal nights. What was
Metal School?
Yes.
I never went to it, but I had friends that went to it.
Steiger brought me there a bunch of times.
Oh yeah,
I remember. Yeah, that was before they were Steel Panther, and I remember when Steel Panther first came out, and I saw like Satchel did a couple of videos because I know these idiots. This is great. Yeah. This is fantastic. So like I do with all my guests, I ask you to bring some tracks, and they can be anything from things that got you started, things that are motivating you now. And you brought 4 tracks, and you said that these are people that they should know about that probably don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, not necessarily, but not everybody knows about the same stuff. So I figured.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is just I'm excited to see what you have. So you
Okay,
brought
cool.
me 4 links, and so you tell me which one you want to start with and why.
Let's
And
start with the first one that I sent you, which I
okay,
think is John Cleary, he's an amazing piano player and singer down in New Orleans,
uh-huh.
and his guitar player in this video is Derwin Perkins, also known as Big D Perkins, and
Okay, I love it. I
he
love it.
is a monster. So let's see. I think the solo starts on this video around 3 minutes.
Okay. It's gonna start right at 3 minutes. And say his name again.
Derwin Perkins, but
Yeah,
if you search Big D Perkins, obviously you can see why he's called Big D.
yeah, I love
He's a
this.
big man, but he is an incredible kind of gospel, soul, blues, jazz, a mix of everything I like.
All right. Well, let's go for a minute or two here.
All right, cool.
Help me somebody, help me somebody.
Yeah. That was hot. Dude, this is great.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah, they go for a while.
Yeah. I try to just do a couple minutes or so, but
Yeah, that's cool.
I see. This is the beauty of this. I did not know who he is, and now I'm absolutely going to be going down the rabbit hole. For anybody that just tuned in, I dropped the link in the comments so you guys can watch the whole thing. Tasty, man.
Yeah, he's a really, really soulful player. I've never seen him play live, but I've seen John Cleary live with some of the guys in that band, and they're all just monster players. Really that kind of like New Orleans style of like it doesn't really lean too far in any one direction. Like there's gospel stuff in there. There's obviously like bluesy stuff. There's a little bit of jazz kind of phrasing in there.
Yeah.
But just I love all that kind of like you know. Those that kind of just it's like very vocal,
Yeah.
and just all these those little chromatic runs that he does, all that stuff, and obviously
Yeah, those
all
doubles.
the double stop stuff, and all his chord stuff is that kind of gospel playing of playing those kind of chord voicings with all those colorful notes just kind of floors me.
Yeah, dude. So okay, I feel myself being heavily pulled towards that if call it gospel style of playing. But I've never really studied it and never really got into it. When you have students that are into that, where do you
Yeah.
typically start them? And like, where did you get started going down that path?
Well, I feel like I'm still started going down that path. Mostly it's just listening. I didn't grow up in that world. So I didn't grow
Right.
up listening to, I mean, that gospel music scene is like it's its own little world.
Yeah.
I grew up listening to, blues and rock and roll music. And so I didn't discover that until much later. And it was mostly through players like this. I picked another video from another great guitar player in that same sort of style. So yeah, just listening to these guys and trying to transcribe stuff and pick stuff out.
Yeah.
That hasn't come up too much in lessons that I teach, but I always recommend people sit down with a song or a recording or a YouTube video of a performance or something and really just try to figure out what they're doing. I mean, it's still, to me, the best thing you can do for your playing because it's ear training. It's learning about phrasing. It's learning about different positions on the fretboard. And still, like, so much of the stuff that I actually play comes from that, rather than like practice. I mean, I practice scales and triads and all kinds of other stuff too, but there's so many things I use every day in the real world that are like, I know directly where I stole that from.
Yeah.
It came from there and then I tweaked it a little bit and now I use it every day. So, there's no replacing that.
No, I tell myself that and tell my students that all the time too. That's like, you don't have to like what I like or what anybody else likes, but whatever you dig, find out why you dig it and put
Absolutely.
and put words to it. So like learn it and say that 9 really sounds good over that 5 chord. Make those connections and not just this fret and this thing. Like try to connect the interval with the chord and why that melody connects it, and like try to
Absolutely.
figure out why you love, like why the hooks get hooked in your ear and you can't get it out. And so
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. Just really learn the stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Learn the chord progression underneath first.
Yeah.
That's the first step. Like, what are they playing over? And then it becomes a lot easier to figure out, well, okay, I like that note in the melody because it's over that chord. And then you can take that and go, okay, I'm going to pull that out of there and apply it other places.
That's it.
Yeah, and it especially pertains to like things that happen over chord changes. Like there's a lot of things, like especially in like jazz stuff, but also in blues, where there'll be a certain line that moves from the sound of one chord to another chord. And there's a transition phrase there. And if you can figure out, what the chord movement is and why that lick works, then you can take that lick and apply it in other places in other chord progressions. Like if it's a 5 chord resolving to a 1 chord, well, maybe that'll work from a 6 chord resolving to the 2 chord because that's the same cadence. And you can go, okay, I can use that same lick here. And it's like, I mean, for me, it's just, I consider it like maximizing your vocabulary. But really, it's just because you're lazy and you don't want to learn a million licks. You're like, I can take this lick, use it all over the place,
So, that approach actually is something that I haven't worked on. Would you mind showing an example of that? Like a lick that might work from 5 to 1, that works from 6 to 2. I get it's the same distance, but obviously you're going to have to alter it for your thirds, right?
Well, yeah, depending on what the qualities of the chords are.
Right.
But like,
if
for instance,
you're keeping diatonic,
like, let's just take like a blues. If we play, so the whole 5 to 1 cadence thing can get a little confusing sometimes, but like if you're in the key of A, right, the 5 chord is E, right? And so obviously if you're playing a blues and you're going from like E7 back to A, you can play, something like that, which is a nice line. But you can play that same line from A going to the D, because A moving to D is the same relationship.
Yeah.
You know, if you just imagine for a second you're in the key of D, A would be the 5 chord of D.
Right.
So you can play that same lick moving to D. Now, if we go up to,
Gotcha.
say we do like a 6, 2, 5, 1, right? That's basically just playing through the circle of fifths. Those are all 5 to
Functioning.
1, 5 to 1, 5 to 1. So I can play that same lick, right? Right. Obviously, I wouldn't necessarily play that because it sounds a little weird to do it all over those chords, but you can pick and choose where you want to do it. So if you have a certain idea that works well, or, you know, there's a lot of like harmonic things that work, like superimposing, like that's kind of superimposing a diminished sound, you know, over that dominant 5 chord to get that flat 9 sound. Yeah. Or you could play like a more altered, you know, I could play that, like say, something, you know, there would be like altered going from E to A, and then I could play, there it's going to D, then I could play, there it's going to B.
Yep.
There it's going to E. So, you know, once you understand kind of the theory behind what's happening there,
sure,
you can move it around different places. And then you see progression like
the
3 to 6, that's the 5 to 1. So I can play
I love that.
So there's the altered, and there you're resolving to a minor. So yeah, you have to change that third.
Yeah.
But that's like just knowing your basic chord tones everywhere. Yeah. Which is something I go over with almost every student that I teach. That's like ground zero is just mapping out chord tones.
Yeah, that's it. Now, did you on a side note, who was the instructor at GIT you most connected with? I'm just curious. Do you remember?
Well, the one that I was probably the most friends with, I never had any of his classes or lessons, but Al Banam was became a good friend of mine, and we actually gigged together a lot.
Really?
And I was influenced him later on just by standing next to him on stage or watching him play, because he's great, man. And he's not just a country player. I mean, he's a really great blues and very soulful player with a lot of attitude.
Do you remember, I feel like, I don't know if he was a full-time instructor, if he came and went. God, what was his name? Jimmy? I can't remember, but he was a slide player. He was a really, really feisty slide player.
I don't know. I don't really remember that.
I'm not going to remember his name. Damn it. So did you get into the chord tone stuff out there, or is that something that has developed over time?
It really happened later on. I took my theory classes very seriously out there. I had a great teacher, Dale Turner, out there who is also somebody I really respect and admire a lot. And I took his theory classes like really seriously. So I did feel like I learned that foundation there. But honestly, when I lived out there, I was 18. I wanted to play in a rock and roll band and like live that life. And I wasn't really at the time really interested in jazz or that kind of harmony. I was listening to rock and roll music and had long hair and was trying to be, a rock star. Which didn't work out, obviously. But yeah, later on, once I moved here and things in my life, just in my personal life kind of changed. I got more interested in, first of all, just listening to different music, and that kind of led the way. I started, now I mostly listen to jazz when I'm just listening to music, even though I don't consider myself a jazz player. I'm really more of like a blues player, but I really enjoy listening to that. So, your tastes change over time. Now I don't hardly listen to guitar music. I'm listening to piano players and horn players, but
I love it.
that all changes over time.
Yeah, man, I get it. Hey, Matt Mack, thank you so much for the donation, man. Yeah, I'm hoping we can do NAMM this year. If Summer NAMM actually happens, I will be there, by the way.
I hope it happens. I missed it last year. It's kind of my favorite little time of year. I love that. It's so laid back. I never, the NAMM in Anaheim was always way too much for me to handle.
Yeah.
Even though I would love to go again. When I lived out there, I'd go and it was like your brain would hurt after a day.
I know. I always equate it to like Vegas. Like leaving is the best part.
Yeah.
You go there and you have like one or two like really over the top, and then you're just like, okay, where's the ripcord? I got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so let's move on to your next track. So which one you want to do and why?
Let's do the next one I sent you. This one is sort of an extension of that last one. This is a great guitar player named, I think it's the Jubu Smith.
Yes.
Clip I sent you. So Jubu's like an incredible gospel player who's very influential in that world. And I didn't really know about him until fairly recently.
Yeah, I don't know about him.
But he's kind of got like a little bit of a cult following. And, well, not a little bit. I mean, in the gospel world, he's a huge influence. But this is a clip of him just playing in a blues club. And the thing about this clip is he's so all over the place with this. Like the amount of stuff he plays, some of it's a little rough around the edges, but like the content of what he's playing, there's so much to sift through. Like I've watched this video a million times and picked out little things and been like, oh, that's a killer move. Or so the top, he plays some cool little stuff. And then around 4 minutes, he kind of gets into the solo. It's another one where they play for, I don't know how long this clip is, 8 minutes. I mean, they're just jamming.
David knows Juba. All right. So did you say start from the top, or where do you want to start?
Yeah, play a little at the top, and then maybe we'll zoom to 4 minutes.
Okay. Here we go.
He plays some really nice stuff and some cool stuff we can talk about too. Like
I love it.
Concepts.
Yeah, dude, holy shit.
So, I
don't even know what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, clearly he's just like going off. But I mean, there's some great, I think it's in B flat minor. I mean, there's some great little, these diminished things, and then, whatever he does. Kind of playing these, playing these.
It's like a diminished cascade.
Yeah, it's totally is. It's like a sequence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Going to the four chord. So it's kind of like, playing B flat minor and then that little diminished passing chord, which a lot of people play stuff like that, But to take that and flesh it out in a solo and be like, okay, well, that chord works. So all those chord tones for that chord work in that spot where you would play that chord. And that's a big concept for me that once I realized that, because there's a lot of chords that we all play and kind of take for granted. Like for instance, well, like if you're playing a blues, right? This is the big one. Say you're playing like a blues we'd do in B flat, but and you're playing B flat 7, and then we all do. Yeah. We're going to the 4 chord, that half step up, and you never think about it. You just go, oh yeah, that's just a little move.
That's just how you get to the 4. Yeah.
But that actually is an altered dominant chord. If you put A in the bass, you have the flat 5th, you have the flat 7th, the 3rd, the flat 13, and the flat 9 on top.
Yeah.
So all of those notes fit in this altered scale, this A altered scale. So when that chord hits in that last bar of your blues, like the last 2 beats of your, you're playing 4 bars of A, you have that last bar going to D. That's an altered dominant chord. You could play you could play that, you could play, different types of chords, and these altered lines work. So right there's a little bit more like fleshed out, but that's all the altered scale, and it's just looking at that chord and not just glazing over it, but actually going, well, what's happening there? What's actually going on? What are all those notes? And what scale or what sound, maybe it's just an arpeggio or maybe it's a scale, but where do all those notes fit in, and kind of figuring that out. And that's exactly what Juba's doing in that clip of playing, playing a diminished passing chord and then going, well, there's all the note. I mean, that's just it's basically like a B diminished arpeggio, and the diminished arpeggio things you can move around in minor thirds. So it could be, you could start it on any of those notes.
Just for everyone watching, that's because the arpeggio in the chord is made up of all minor thirds. So it actually has 4 names to it, and you can start on any one of them. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Dude, that is a big concept. I, frankly, haven't gone down that road at all. I have been one of those people that takes that little push to the 4 or 5 for granted and haven't. What you just did, I've never thought about that.
Yeah, well, once you start thinking about it, you start, it all comes down to, at least for me anyway, a lot of it comes down to chords. Understanding like the relationships of chords and harmony, which is something like I'm still learning every day about. And if you talk to piano players, they're like way deeper in that realm than almost any guitar player is. Yeah. But you can, start kind of figuring it out. And for me, a lot of it is just listening to music and figuring out the chords that they're doing. When you listen to like, Ray Charles or something, for instance, like you hear a lot of these chords that he's doing. He'll do altered dominant chords all the time. You hear him start out songs with, that kind of, which is, it's like an augmented chord, or I think of it as like a 13, flat 13. And so when you look at that, you go, okay, I can play these lines that just outline that chord, and it's not so complicated. It's really just like, what's the chord? What are the notes of the chord? Let's play those, and then let's resolve to the next chord.
No, I as soon as you said it and played it, I got it instantaneously. It's just so true. It's the guitarist kind of thought process where like, that's just the chord you play for a second before you get to the 4 chord, like to the chord you're really going to. It's like, and not choosing as an improviser to say something about that very fast moment of color,
Yeah. Well, and it could be longer. If you're playing a really slow blues or a slow tempo thing, you have a little more time there. But yeah, it's kind of like something that I think it's the curse and the good thing about being a guitar player is that it's so shape based. Yeah. Everything is shapes. Whereas when you get on a piano or something, there's just all the notes are laid out. So it's just, it's different, clear. Like it's ergonomically different, So one of the cool things about the guitar is you do have these shapes you can rely on and move around, and it's really helpful for learning things and visualizing things. But you still have to kind of you still have to analyze what you're doing and think about the fine details and go, okay, well, what is this? And then you can attach shapes to it and be like, oh, okay, I can move that around. But sometimes this kind of stuff I think about when I'm like driving or laying in bed. I'm like, oh yeah, that chord is all these notes, and what if that all fits within this scale? It's not necessarily, you don't have to be playing to think about it.
I couldn't agree more. My wife asks me all the time. She's like, "What the hell are you thinking about over there?" And like we're driving in the car, and I'm like listening intently. And she always has this, and all our wives or husbands or whatever have people that aren't musicians have this knack to always start a conversation right when the lead starts.
Yeah.
And she's looking at me. She's like, she's like, we're not even in the same car together. That active listening thing. I would implore all of you out there to, when you just the more you play and the more you listen and the more you get into learning the theory and really hearing the functions of chords change and trying to hear that when you're listening to music and when you're in the car, like I feel like it's a different mentality. Like there's one where you're just like, I'm just going to let it wash over me and enjoy it. But that active listening part where you're actively listening to the chords function and how the notes connect it as a musician, that was a place it took me such a long time to get to. But just so anyway, I'm rambling now. But for anybody out there, like that is an important thing.
Yeah. I think sometimes it becomes hard to turn that off and just enjoy music.
Yes.
That's why sometimes I like listening to stuff that's a little bit beyond my comprehension level, because then I can just kind of listen to and that's a process. Like some stuff that I listen to now, if I'd have heard it 10 years ago, it would have just sounded like noise or and now it's starting to make sense. So but I mean, there's it's still good to enjoy music, but it's also great to sit down and analyze it as well.
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I still, when I drive a lot, I like to listen to classical music, because my ear and my theory brain are not even remotely caught up to that level, and I can just swim in it, and just and enjoy movements and changing tempos, because the whole feel is different with a conductor versus a band. I purposefully try to keep a lot of that in my repertoire just to keep in that space you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, let's go back. And so you wanted to jump to like 4 on here?
Jump to 4 minutes. It's a long solo. There's a lot of stuff in here, but there's some really cool licks that I've taken from this and other videos of his. So let's see what we got here.
Anybody that's just tuning in, this is Jubu Smith. Hey, Tomo. How's it going, brother?
Yeah, so that's good.
Yeah, dude, there's so much in there.
Yeah, there's so much in there. Like, he does, again, kind of those transition chords, like he's doing, and then he kind of does this. Or something like kind of outlining this, that transition chord, really.
I see it.
And then he does
a
really cool thing, which I can't really play the way he does, but this kind of let's see, kind of outlining. I mean, he does a cool lick there with some colorful notes in there, but it's kind of like, he's on the 4 minor chord, but he's almost playing out of like the relative major, almost like a major 9 kind of arpeggio. Which is a really cool, simple thing to do. I do all the time, which is like just play out of the relative major of the minor chord. If you look at like this is like an E flat minor.
Yeah.
So if you go up to the relative major and you play the major 7, it gives you like a minor 9 sound because there's the 9, the flat 3rd, the 5th, and the flat 7. And then if you add the major 9 in there, that gives you the 11, which is almost like a D flat over E flat.
Yeah.
So it's just, over this.
Sounds great.
And then back. So you can do that all over the place. If you're playing even over the 1 chord. That's a great little, it kind of pulls you away a little bit, even though it's all diatonic to the minor, it's all within the minor, B flat minor scale.
Yeah.
It's not any outside notes, but it does pull you away a little bit because that arpeggio is its own self-contained thing that has sort of its own sound that you're kind of superimposing over that other chord. And they lay out really nicely under the fingers. And once you learn those arpeggios, again, it's like maximizing your vocabulary. You're like, okay, if I learn my major 7 arpeggios, that's like a C sharp major 7. Obviously, I could play that over a C sharp major chord, if that's the chord. But I can also now play it over a minor chord.
See, look, you're even teaching Tomo right now.
Yeah, well, it's payback. I've learned a lot from Tomo. He's an amazing teacher and a really great person. Yeah,
he is. He really, really is. I'm glad you know Tomo. Anybody out there, I'm sure everybody out there does know Tomo, but make sure you go check him out. Jack, I'm going to be going back and rewatching a lot of this video to check out,
cool.
to really dive deep in everything that you just did.
Well, so I can show you one more thing, and this is something I'll give credit. I totally took this idea from, 2 players. The player we were talking about before, Derwin Perkins, does this thing, but also Guthrie Trapp, who I'm very blessed to call a friend, who's an amazing guitar player here in Nashville. Yeah. He does this a lot, which is play a major 7 arpeggio a whole step down from a dominant chord. So if we take like a regular A7 chord, and we go down a whole step to G, and we play a major 7 chord, a major 7 arpeggio.
Okay.
And we look at those notes, it's all the colorful notes, right? G is the flat 7, B is the 9, D is the 11, and F sharp is the 13.
Yeah.
So it's all those upper extensions, right? If you were to play on a piano, like a triad here, and then add all the other diatonic notes, it would be all these upper extensions. So it gives you, it's all within the key. It's all within like a mixolydian sound. But it totally takes you away from that because you're not playing the root or the 3rd or the 5th. You're playing.
Okay, so if I hold down in A7, let me see if it'll bleed through. I can play over it.
right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to resolve it a little bit.
Yeah,
You have to
yeah,
get
yeah.
back to a third or you know, because if you go on it too long, it does kind of stretch you away from the core notes. But
Yeah.
you know, or
That was
right.
hot.
So you can mix it in with the Mixolydian stuff. But that's just a third application. So if you learn those major 7 arpeggios, and you get comfortable with them, it's like you can start applying them different places.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, Tomo gets 2. So you get flat 7, 9, 11th, and 13th. Yeah, that's slick, man. That's slick. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do look like a kid on Christmas morning. You're right. Oh man.
Cool.
I want to. So before we go into your third one, how did you get connected with Adam?
Just playing around town.
Yep. But you didn't know each other from Maryland then?
No, because I haven't lived in Maryland since I was a kid. I still have family up there, but my parents don't live up there, so I didn't really do a lot of playing up there. I moved away when I was 13, so and I just started playing guitar when I was about 11, so I wasn't like going. And in Frederick.
Now, do you guys still play together? I know COVID and everything. I don't know if you guys are still intertwined or if you guys have gone separate ways.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, no, we're not really playing together. He's kind of doing his own thing, and I haven't really been playing much out since COVID because I have the new baby, and I've been just teaching so much, and that's been really great. I mean, I'm really happy to teach, especially now with 2 young kids. It's really nice to just be able to come down into my office, teach for a few hours, and then go back to doing family stuff.
Absolutely.
But I'm hoping to play some more. I just don't know. It's going to be so different. I don't know if I'm going to want to go on the road as much as I used to. I also just want to do more of my own stuff. I really love playing blues and this type of music. And the cool thing about Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that is I have like an outlet to do that now. So,
yeah,
I'd like to do some of my own music. We'll see. If I can get that together.
Yeah. So when things, I know you're doing it for the internet, you just kind of said that, but when things went down, were you playing regularly in a band around town? Were you touring? Like what exactly?
Well, it was winter. It was, coming out of the winter, like here, it's kind of, a lot of people kind of shut down the touring for the winter. Like especially around like Christmas, New Year's, and into January, and then it kind of kicks back up again February and March. Of course, March is right when everything fell apart.
Yeah.
So I did have some stuff scheduled that got canceled, but fortunately, I had already been kind of teaching some, and I just really leaned into that harder. Yeah. Up until then, it had just been kind of like a side thing I did, Monday through Thursday, and then I'd go out on the road on the weekends and play.
Yeah.
Or play around town, but mostly going out on the road. And when everything shut down, I was very grateful to have that already, kind of, because I know other people that were kind of scrambling.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I just sort of dug into that, and fortunately had enough students to kind of get through the summer. And then, like everything, it kind of slows down in the holidays. But now things are going great again. And I owe a lot of that to you because you've helped me out a lot.
Oh, well, dude, it's my pleasure. Well, how can people take lessons from you? How can they find you while we're on this subject?
Yes, so I have a Patreon page, which I'm doing. I just, I'm posting some video lessons and tabs and notation and the backing tracks that I make that I play to.
Yep.
And that's, cheap and a good way. And I try to answer the messages and interact with people as much as possible. So if you have questions or something, I'm happy to answer it. That's kind of an easy way to get in touch with me. Or message me on Instagram. I check that too. But but I teach mostly Zoom and Skype lessons now. So,
Gotcha.
My email is on my Instagram page, and I think you can email me through Facebook and YouTube and stuff too. And
I also have Jack's channel linked in the description, everybody. And I saw some of the mods sharing it around too. So if you're interested in taking lessons from him, I really hope that you take the step and do it. I love watching your all your Patreon stuff and that you have it transcribed out, because it really takes the guessing out of it and makes it clear.
Yeah, I'm still new to it, so I'm working hard to get more stuff out there. But yeah, and YouTube, I don't post a lot. I don't have a lot of stuff, but I'm working on posting more stuff and getting more things out there for people. Well, Instagram's kind of been my main platform for a couple of years now, just because I really like Instagram, the social interaction aspect of it, the fact that it's really geared towards meeting people and talking and communicating, and people that would never know about you can find you easily. And I've made some great friends. Like Tomo is a great example. I've known about Tomo since I was a kid living in Japan. Because he's, I remember seeing an instructional DVD or video that he did on like funk guitar and slapping. I saw it in a guitar shop. It was playing. And I was like, who is this guy? I mean, I was a teenager, and he was probably it was many years ago. So, but I remember seeing that and remembering that name. And then years later through Instagram, we were able to connect. So I've made a lot of great friends like that,
that's the beauty of Instagram for sure. Well, should we move on to your third track?
Yeah, let's do it. So, I think
just going straight down the line.
Yeah, the third one. So this is somebody that maybe a lot of people haven't heard of. This guy is another friend of mine who I've made through Instagram. His name's Charlie Allen. And he is a monster, man. He's such a great guitar player. He lives in London. And we kind of connected through Instagram, I play these Headstrong amps, and he also uses those amps. And the guy who makes them, I think, shared one of his posts. And I saw it and was like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And then we started chatting, and we did like a collaboration video a while back. But this is just a short clip of him from Instagram, but it's he posted it on YouTube too. And man, he's a monster. He's so good. And I don't really understand why more people don't know about this guy.
Let's do it. So what was his name one more time?
Charlie Allen.
Charlie Allen. And guys, I will drop the link right here in the comments. 37 seconds. All right, let's do it.
Yeah, but it's good.
There were so many hot things in there.
He's great. And that's kind of a blues, a very bluesy thing, but he plays all kinds of stuff. But yeah, there's just, great tone and great feel. And, kind of like you were talking about before, like stretching out a little bit and playing some cool things and kind of extending on the sounds of the chords. And he does kind of, I think that song is in D. It's got kind of this almost like Albert Collins.
Yeah.
Kelly vibe.
See, look, that's Mr. Tonic Amps. He's like, I hear some Iceman in there.
Yeah, for sure. Which we all, who doesn't love that, But he does kind of a cool thing in there, which is sort of like what we were just talking about with that major 7 sound. Or that major 9 sound where he does something like that. I'm not playing
Yeah,
it. You know, which is a really cool thing to add, because it's kind of it's a blues. He's kind of playing minor pentatonic stuff, so it's kind of one of those blueses where it's like a little ambiguous, what the third is. You can play minor, you could play major or dominant, Mixolydian stuff. But so, yeah, putting that, like there's the major third right there.
Right.
But it starts with the minor third. And then back to, so I mean, that's the kind of stuff.
That's hot. That's hot, man.
Yeah, that's like a cool thing you can use with that. And he's got a lot of great videos on his he's kind of an Instagram person too. So, but yeah, he's another person that like we've chatted some, and I feel like, that's the cool thing about social media and the internet is like we're talking right now, and you know, we've met once and we live in different parts of the country, but I feel like we're friends, and
it's awesome.
It's great. I love it.
I'm gonna watch this one more time just because it was only 37 seconds.
Yeah, for sure.
Try to pay close attention again. A guy. This is Charlie Allen, and Charlie Allen Guitar is his Instagram. Thank you, Vipul. Hope I said your name correctly. All right. Man, those bends through the third on the fifth string there, that's such
all that stuff,
that stuff just gets my blood flowing. I love that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you can get so much out of that. I mean, that's like Albert Collins or Albert King, is like it's all that,
But it's on the high strings. Just doing it on the low strings like that.
Yeah. Well, on a telly that speaks well, because you go to that bridge pickup and those lower strings really have a twang and a pop to them. So yeah, makes sense.
Love it, Charlie Allen. I'm learning this whole time. This has been great, guys.
Well, when you told me about guitar players to pick, I figured we all know Albert King and Hendrix and all these guys who I love dearly and have been super inspired by, but why not talk about some other guys that maybe people haven't been turned on to yet? Because when I found all these guys, it was like, zeroed in. I'm like down the tunnel of like, what are these guys all about? And so, hopefully that can happen for some other people.
Love it. All right, so before we play Jack's fourth and final pick here, if anybody has any questions for him, feel free to drop them into the comments. David Gordon has been slamming this whole chat, saying the fourth one has to be Captain Sensible. I don't know who Captain Sensible is. Do you?
Captain Sensible.
This whole time.
No.
All right.
I don't know who Captain Sensible is, but I don't think it is. Because I know the fourth player, and he's not
Captain Sensible.
I wouldn't say that.
All right. Well, David, do you have a link for us for Captain Sensible? He's been slamming this the whole time in the chat.
Yeah, let us know. I want to know.
Yeah, maybe we'll do this.
It's from the Damned.
Captain Sensible is from the Damned. I don't know. Let's see if we can. I'm not seeing any guitar here. The Damned, neat. Ace of Spades. No, this can't be. Then he started doing crack. Is the Hendrix of punk rock? No.
Oh, okay.
I totally different vein. Totally different vein.
I mean, I'll check that out on my own time. I feel
Yeah.
like that'll be, some extracurricular.
Yeah, see the guy's winding you up. There you go, Block 18. I appreciate that.
Okay, I got you.
All right, Kyle Milbrandt. Kyle Milbrandt wants to talk substitutions and how you would insert them into blues. Well, we kind of already went over that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can do. We kind of talked about it, but like basic things like putting a 2-5-1 in, go into the 4 chord or something like that. Like if you're playing a blues in A, just like we were talking about earlier about how you can treat that A chord as the 5 chord of D, right?
Yeah.
It's the dominant 5 chord of this chord. You can elaborate on that and make it a full 2-5-1, which is like a pretty common kind of jazz cadence, which is like a minor 2 chord to a dominant 5 chord. Usually it would go to like a major 7 chord, but in the blues we would go to a dominant 7. So that's a 2-5-1 going to the 4 chord. So you're looking at it as the 2-5-1 in the key of D.
Yeah.
And so you can play, if you know your arpeggios, you can play all these chord tone things right in there.
Yeah.
Which are really nice, simple things like that, but it gets more fun when you start kind of altering that dominant 5 chord.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, we can get, this is like a whole hour-long video in and of itself talking about a 2-5-1, but real quick, like one of the other substitutions that we kind of hinted at earlier was playing like a diminished sound over the dominant 5 chord, which basically all you're adding is the flat 9. So in A, it would be you're adding the B flat as like an altered chord tone on that 5 chord. And if you play like this voicing of a diminished chord and you play A in the bass, you have the flat 7 G. You look at it in the key of A. You have flat 7 the G. You have the 3rd C sharp. You have E the 5th, and then that flat 9 on top. So that's like, that's like an A7 flat 9 voicing. It also happens to be a diminished chord, which you can move around. So you can play, you can move those arpeggios around. So like a very simple thing to think about is, I'm playing A7, then I'm playing A7 flat 9 in that same spot going to the 4 chord. So I can play, and I can resolve it. So there I'm playing like 3rd, or I could play it here, 3rd, 5th, flat 7, flat 9, root, flat 7, F sharp, the 3rd of D.
3rd of D,
right?
yeah. Got it.
So that's a very simple kind of line. Now you add that to the 2-5-1, and we play like an E minor 7 leading up to that. We can play it right here. Let me get my guitar in. Right, so
Yes.
and you can add chromatic thing. Right, so that's just thinking again, you could be playing a simple blues where somebody's just chugging along on A, and you can substitute those sounds in there because basically you're just adding these chords, and so really you're just playing out of the chords.
Yeah,
you're just kind of adding your own chords in there to play out of.
Love it.
So yeah, that's there's a lot more. We can then say, okay, well, the E minor, we can do our thing where we did the relative major, right? So like E minor, we can play G major 7, because that would be a minor 9. So we have a G major. You know, we have this right here, so we could do that instead of our E minor. We can do G major. There's our diminished. So,
Yeah.
Right, adding some chromatic stuff. So there's a lot there to unwrap, but that's a little bit about, you know, substitutions. The way I think about it, anyway, it's just.
I love it. Morgan Smith wants to hear you talk about the turnarounds. There's chromatic turnarounds from Big D.
Chromatic turnarounds. I'm not exactly sure what he's talking about, but there's definitely a lot of cool chromatic stuff in there. I mean, just like, you know, the chromatic thing is just kind of like, the way I look at it is like, you can add, if you know your arpeggio shapes, you can play, those are your chord tones. So those are the notes you really want to target on the strong beats. You know, the downbeat of the chord change, it's generally a good rule of thumb to land on a chord tone. Yeah, land on a chord tone and target that. But the chromatic stuff can happen in between those strong beats, you know, and they can help you get to a chord tone. So if you know your arpeggios and you know where you want to go and what note you want to land on, you can you sort of have freedom to add chromatic notes in there wherever you want. There's a lot of ways that I do it all the time. Like just in that example of a blues, like going to the D chord, I may target the third of the D chord, F sharp. And so I might go from A, walk down, chromatic, and land there on the downbeat. Or I might go walk up chromatically from E, you know, and then once I'm there, I might go root down to flat 7 of D. So, you know, those are like simple little chromatic tricks you can use. But depending on how you phrase it and how you're constructing your lines, you have pretty much freedom to throw chromatic stuff in there anywhere. Especially if you're playing faster lines, you'll hear a lot of guys throw a lot of chromatic stuff in there to fill out the line so that they can get to the chord tone, you know, phrase it right. You have to add some notes in there if you're playing that many notes. So
yeah. Moral to the story, guys. Know the notes in the chord tones, and that's your outline, that's your roadmap. You can choose to connect them or, you know, imply them however you wish, but know the actual notes in the chord and the intervals and play to them, play about them. That's the idea.
And it's not a rule. It's just it's like learn that rule and then you can break it all you want.
Exactly.
You know, but it's a good place to start. It's definitely a good place to start if you want to break out of thinking about a scale over a whole chord progression, which a lot of people I know struggle with. Like I can just play this scale over this whole progression and that works. And sometimes that does work, but you're not necessarily going to outline the chords that way.
And I would say that, so when I have students ask that, or when I think about it a lot, is do a slow song, a song where each change is there for a long time. And practice that concept of the longer a chord is there, the more you should say about that, i.e. change your scale or play those chord tones accordingly. When things go blazing by, you know, a singular scale approach makes much more sense, right? But when things are really slow, you're kind of, you know, it behooves you to say something about that chord like it's its own moment in time, and it's linking the one before and after it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends a lot on the chord progression too.
Yes.
If it's like a strictly diatonic chord progression, like all the chords are from the major scale, then it makes more sense to play melodies out of the major scale. And it's still really helpful to know your triads and know where your chord tones are, because you can still hit chord tones, but sometimes you might just think of like a singable melody that falls out of that scale. But when you have chords that really need attention, like certain notes change from the scale or the sound you're playing over the one chord, and then all of a sudden, like for instance, if it goes to like a 3 major chord, it's got some notes in it that are, or it's got, you know, F in it, which is not in A major. So maybe you want to hit that note, know where it is. And that's where mapping out chord tones is really helpful. And that's in the blues. You know, the blues is like, if you play A7 to D7 to E7, there's not one scale that technically fits over all those, even though we all play minor pentatonic and major pentatonic, and that's great and all. Yeah. But if you want to get deeper into it, learning the arpeggios is really helpful.
Right on. Well, all right, let's do one more question, and then we'll go on to your last track here. I'm not going to keep you too much longer.
I could go all day. I feel like
I know. So
I feel like I'm keeping you. I'm like, let's.
No, dude, this is what it's all about, man. So Sean, thank you for tuning in. He says, this is tremendous. You said, how do you transition from major to minor while following the chord tones? Now, a lot of that's obviously going to determine or be predicated on what the progression is, clearly. But the concept of mixing major and minor, I don't know, Jack, where do you want to start with that?
Well, this actually segues good into my next video because it's a little more, I picked some kind of, I mean, obviously, you know, Charlie's video was very bluesy, but the next video is like straight up blues.
Okay.
Because I love straight up blues. And that's
absolutely
when you listen to B.B. King or, you know, B.B. King's really a great example. Albert Collins too, but that mixing major and minor thing is really prevalent. The next player I picked is a guy named Chris Kane, who, when I lived out in Los Angeles, you know, he's a California guy, and he doesn't really tour much outside of California that I know of. But he's kind of a cult blues hero in the blues scene in LA or in California. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to kind of get turned on to him when I first moved out there, and I saw him live a bunch of times, and he's really incredible blues player, very much from the Albert King and B.B. King school. He's also a killer singer. This video, I was looking this morning for videos of him, and there's a lot of like really bad quality iPhone in the club videos where he's playing awesome, but I was like, I wanted to find something that was a little more professional shot. I think this is recent because he's got a COVID mask on in some of the scenes. And I mean, he's been around for decades. So, and I have a few of his albums. He's great, but this is just kind of a video I found of him playing some very like B.B. King style blues stuff.
All right, so let's play this, and then we'll talk mixing major and minor.
The solo starts at like 2 minutes and 15 seconds, I think.
Okay, let's bring this in. And here, let me drop the link right here. Hey, McCrae, what's happening, brother? All right, let's bring it up to like 2 minutes-ish and see. Little Chris Kane. Let's do it.
And I used to know, oh, I miss my friends. I miss my friends. And I pray for a world I used to know.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing over some pretty cool chord changes, actually.
Yes.
But he's definitely, playing that a lot of major and minor pentatonic kind of blended together, and a lot of that kind of let's see, I think they're in C. You know, so with that type of stuff, I mean, I learned that kind of playing just from listening to a ton of BB King, when I was a kid, like a ton of BB King, and learning those phrases, like, and all that kind of like really stock blues phrasing that he kind of invented. But once you get, once you want to get deeper into that phrasing, just learning your major and minor pentatonic positions everywhere, and being able, being able to minor pentatonic, major pentatonic, knowing those kind of those five positions of those scales, that'll kind of give you the complete picture. But the phrasing part of it, the actual like making music part of it, really comes from like listening and learning things. The cool thing about blues stuff, like more straightforward kind of, I don't want to say simple, but like harmonically a little more simple blues, I find you can soak up a lot of that stuff kind of through osmosis. Like if you listen to BB King every day for the next year, that will seep into your musical DNA, because it's so rooted in like tradition and nature and history. Like it's almost a part of like nature, it's part of the world.
Yeah.
The connection is very deep there. And that's why it resonates so well with so many people. And that's why it's like prevalent in all music. Everybody's influenced by BB King, whether they know it or not. Right. Get like Live at the Regal, or get, any one of his albums and just listen to it all the time. I don't think that would hurt anybody in their life.
No, I couldn't agree more. Well, Jack, it's been about an hour and 20 minutes. We've gone through your tracks. This has been a real treat for me. Like I said, I love listening to you. I love learning from you. And so just thanks again for coming on here, man. It's the pleasure is all mine, I can assure you.
Thank you so much, Michael, man. I really appreciate it. You've been, great. The support has been amazing. So, and thanks to everybody who has like found out about me recently. Thanks to you, people on Patreon and Instagram. I'm really very grateful and humbled by the whole thing. It's great.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we all feel the same way. And everybody out there, thanks for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please check out Jack's links. Give him a sub. Follow him on Instagram. Go over to his Patreon. If you're interested in a deeper dive, he does do Skype lessons, and you can email him. You can find his email on his Instagram page. And thank you again for tuning in. Happy Friday. I'm going to try to do more of these Friday streams with guests. It seems like a really good time slot. It works well for everyone. Mods, thank you so much for all you do. You guys know you guys are the best in the game. And just thanks again to everybody for being a part of this amazing community that we're building together. Keep the thing in your hands, and I'll see you real soon. Jack, hang tight.
Cool.